Welcome back to another episode here in Osaka at Expo 2025. And now I have the absolute pleasure of being joined by Maher Nasser, who's the UN Commissioner General here at Expo 2025. Maher, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us on Import Export TV.
Well, thank you for coming to the UN Pavilion and for showing an interest in the work that we're trying to do here.
Well, I think it's so important, Maher. I think the opportunity that the UN does as part of Expo is almost too understated, in my opinion. I think the unification of all the countries to share the message, share the goals and the vision is so powerful. And walking through the pavilion, it really re-emphasized that message. And in my personal opinion, with all the troubled times that we're in, and that's always going to be the case, unfortunately, in many past decades, your role and your organization plays such a more important part.
Oh, thank you. I couldn't agree with you more. I think in 2015, when world leaders adopted the Sustainable Development Goals Agenda 2030 at the United Nations, it was a roadmap to a world in which everyone can thrive in peace, dignity, equality on a healthy planet. And subsequent to 2015, the BIE actually started incorporating the need for sustainability and reflecting and coalescing around the goals in the requirements when countries want to host an expo. What are you going to do and how are you going to make it relevant? So you have been to Dubai and you saw the big focus on the SDGs. Similarly here, Expo in Osaka, the theme is designing future society for our lives. Everyone might have a different version of the future that they want to see, but I think we can all agree that we want a future that is peaceful, where we have equality, where people have dignity, and we can also live in harmony with nature. Sustainability becomes a core part of it. So what we have tried to do here, 2025 is also the year when the UN turns 80. And those 80 years, 8 decades of impact, as Zone 1 shows, is that the UN has and can be maybe credited for the fact that we haven't had a third world war. There has been conflicts. We know that not everything was hunky-dory, but that's the reality of the world in which we live. The world is a reflection of reality. The UN, as Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld once said, the people shouldn't look at the UN world as if it's a painting made by Picasso. It's actually something painted by them. Yeah. So we try to basically provide a list of milestones in our history that make the UN relatable. So many things that we take for granted today. Wherever you look around, I mean, gender equality, empowerment of women, everybody now talks about it. It was first introduced as a core issue on the international agenda in 1946 with the creation of the Commission on the Status of Women and subsequent conferences and emphasis on the role of women. The universality of human rights. It wasn't always the case until the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted in 1948. They are still being violated in different parts of the world, but we do have a blueprint. We have 30 articles in the Universal Declaration, and that's what we remind people of, and so on and so on. Climate change, environmental degradation, and the need to protect the environment. Some of the success stories as well, the eradication of smallpox, the way that humanity and the private sector, working with governments, dealt with the ozone layer depletion. So all of these are highlighted there. The second part of the pavilion is, many people think of the UN, it's always something, what is the headline? The Security Council, you see peacekeeping, you see food aid. But the UN system, what we represent here is over 50 entities. And when you use the cell phone, the connectivity, the way that communication connect across borders, it's because of the work of entities like the International Telecommunications Union. 90% of commodities and our communication in print is sent through the post. There's a Universal Postal Union that does that. International Atomic Energy Agency develops safeguards for the peaceful uses of atomic energy, also monitors and ensures that there isn't any leakage, etc., etc. But also they invest in in research on microplastics in the ocean and so on and so forth. So every aspect of one's life is touched by one part of the UN, and that's what we wanted to show the people. The biggest message that really we want people to go out with is that the world that we show in Zone 3, the immersive reality, it can be seen first as, oh my, this is utopian. It's not really. If you give people hope, they will aspire to achieve that goal. And it's mainly a message that we can do this, but we have to do it together.
Yeah.
It cannot be just the United Nations doing it alone, or governments alone, or the private sector. It has to be individuals, civil society, academia, private sector, and governments at all levels.
Yeah, beautifully said, Maher. I think the message there about relatability for, let's say, the common person walking through these pavilions, what you've done here with the message is really, it is a way of saying, well, yes, it's not just for politicians or big business around the UN. It's about how, I love the message of the hope message that is part of the pavilion as well, because you're right. I think there's always going to be challenges, no matter what decade we're in, but it is about uniting as individuals, as countries, as organizations, and also by trying to make sure that everyone shares the same visions and goals so that we can all move towards that in the right way. One of the things I wanted to ask you about is, obviously our audience is very trade specific, import, export, global value chains and supply chains. And the UN, the SDGs now, increasingly a really big part of global trade. And I think that message is important for the individual from a B2C perspective, B2B and B2G. What's your view on how businesses facing those challenges about how to adopt and let's say, update their businesses to make sure they can try and do their best to achieve SDG accreditation?
I mean, there are parts of the SDGs that are beyond a single company or even a country to deal with. Like, everybody's concerned about climate change, and we see the reality. Every day I look at the weather app, and it says, Osaka, temperatures 32 degrees, 6 degrees higher than the average, 8 degrees higher than average. We are witnessing it, we're living it. So no individuals or company or a country can actually impact that directly, but it's a long-term thing that we need to think about and work with. But there are certain parts of the SDGs that I think we can. It's about decisions. Like, let's take gender equality, SDG 5. When leaders, whether in a private sector, government, at any level, or even international organizations, take a decision to really make a difference, only a quarter of the world's parliament are women. We know that about, similarly, 22-23% of ambassadors at the United Nations are women. Here at Expo, I think it's only also 24 commission generals are women. So this is one aspect of it. Like, when you talk about gender equality, it is active decisions that can be actually overnight. When Secretary General Antonio Guterres was elected in 2016, and he started office in January 1st, 2017, every appointment decision he made at the senior level, the Under Secretary Generals, Assistant Secretary General that he was responsible for appointing, it was 50-50. Every UN resident coordinator in the 132 countries where we have UN resident coordinators, 50-50. So in the business sector, I think the Fortune 500 companies, I think only 80 of them have women CEOs. So it's even a worse record than the public sector. So there's one example about, I mean, for example, that's one of them. SDG 12, and I work a lot with the advertising industry, responsible production and consumption. There are many companies that basically their job is to make us buy things and consume more for no purpose other than get somebody rich and richer and richer. Everybody needs to make a profit, but let's also build smart decision, think of the welfare and the future of others in our next generations. Plastic pollution is another one. People always focus on plastic and plastic. There are now, if you can invest in biodegradable plastic, technology is amazing, but are we using it enough to get there? So if you look at the 17 SDGs, There are 169 targets within those and 223 indicators of achievement. Individuals, industries, local government, once they start really using that as the blueprint, we will definitely be in a much better place than we could be if they totally ignore it.
Yeah, totally agree. I think that especially the SME sector, the small and medium-sized enterprises, in many ways they're doing much more than the bigger companies because they want to use it as a way of being different and competitive advantage, and also being able to potentially justify higher prices because they are investing in some of those SDG practices as well. Yeah,
I think sometimes you have a choice of buying a product that is built sustainably, that is a little bit more expensive. But again, going back at the UN, we have this. They have started this discussion about the global GDP, global domestic product of a country. It was always measured in economic terms, basically money terms. A forest that was untouched was not valued. We don't give value to nature, to natural resources. A clean river was not given a value. So I think there's a discussion about why or how can we actually start to give value to protect natural resources and use that as part of our new form of GDP discussions. Bhutan started the happiness index, which now we have International Happiness Day at the UN, and there's a global happiness index. People sometimes may look at that sarcastically, but if politicians and governments start making decisions on the basis of how do people in this how will it benefit the people in my country, and why am I number 125 in the happiness index and country X is number 1 or 2? What can I learn from them? And I think these are kinds of things that need to be taken beyond the drawing boards. And as people learn more and hopefully be inspired by our pavilion, but also actually many other pavilions. I have so far visited about 70 pavilions, and I intend to visit every single pavilion. National pavilions have amazing national stories, but also there are many pavilions by Japanese companies about the different work and efforts and even science that is not yet in with us, that can really get us across a big hurdle. And if you haven't been, I highly recommend that you also visit some of the local Japanese companies' pavilions.
Yeah, I look forward to that. I know that we went to the Japanese pavilion and the biodegradable, the actual product life cycle. It's so powerful, the message, so inspirational as well. And I think what you said earlier there, Mahir, is that it's actually achievable. I think one of the great things about this expo that I've noticed in the short time is that it's not just sort of far out there. It's actually within reach for companies and individuals to really, embrace and be optimistic and hopeful about.
I mean, you mentioned the Japan pavilion.
Yeah.
When you walk, and of course there's a big focus on algae, and there this table with the demonstration that algae is 14 times more efficient in extracting CO2 from the atmosphere than timber. Algae is, I don't know, I forgot the percentages, but 14 times I think more protein efficient than soybeans and so on. So maybe we don't fancy eating algae now, but I think we should really start thinking about what other applications can this new thing be used for.
No, very true. There's some really inspirational pavilions, great stories. I think, and as you said as well, Mahir, the ESG, the social part, people can measure the environmental, they can measure the governance, but that social impact now is becoming more and more focused and a spotlight shown on that. So how countries, individuals and companies can really show what they're doing on a social level. And I think that's really important as well.
And I think one thing you may have seen in our pavilion, actually in the first part, is that the UN was created in 1945. The world's population was 2.2 billion, and there were 51 member states. Fast forward 80 years, 2025, we have 193 member states, 2 observer states, and 8.2 billion people. Where people live has also changed. Europe and the Americas were like this big chunk from the world's population. That big chunk stayed that big chunk. Asia is still 5 billion people, 4 billion at the moment. Africa is 1.3 billion now. 18% of the world's population. It used to be 7%.
Yeah.
By the end of this century, it will be 40%. Median age in Africa is 19.
I know. Yeah.
In Europe, it's 44. In Japan, it's 49. So when you look at this reality, and I mean, we never had, when the UN was created, there was no AI, there was no internet, there was no space, there was no satellites, and majority of people lived in rural areas. Today, more people live in urban areas and centers than in rural areas, and yet you have a continent, Africa, 53 countries, with no permanent member in the Security Council. You have India, the world's largest country, is not, and so on. So you see, the world has changed. The UN structure on peace and security hasn't. The international financing institutions hasn't changed. So in 2024, the Summit of the Future, world leaders unanimously adopted the Pact for the Future, which addresses the need to actually now to maybe bring the UN of today to the world of today rather than the world of 1945. And that would include Security Council reform of the international financial system, but also putting new measures to regulate the new technologies that have a great potential. At the same time, they're creating a lot of anxiety if left unregulated.
And that security risk is there as well for that new technology.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's such a powerful observation. I think you're right. That pact around that whole Africa region is a powerhouse of the future, but they're also some of the largest emerging nations. The Enhanced Integrated Framework that the UN's part of, they do great work to get them up to speed with World Trade Organizations and other things as well. The unification that the UN provides for all those industry, well, I wouldn't say industry bodies, but all those bodies that you mentioned in stage two in this pavilion, it's so probably so many individuals and companies and countries don't even realize how many of those agencies that you bring together with the UN. It's so great to see, and that's such powerful work.
Well, I mean, you've been around, you visited a number of pavilions, and this is what really I like about an expo is that you can actually visit the world with almost zero carbon footprint, meet people from different countries. You could have breakfast with somebody from Africa, lunch with somebody from Asia, dinner with somebody from Latin America, and have drinks with somebody from Australia. So it's beauty and diversity that we can see through the people who work in the pavilions. I like to go and then always introduce myself and speak to people and saying, where are you from and what brings you here? And of course, when they say, I'm the United Nations, oh, wow, great, thank you. Can we? So it's expos. I used to be a skeptic. I'm now a big fan.
Great. Well, I know you're very busy, and I could definitely keep talking to you for hours. But thank you so much, Maher, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to us on Import-Export TV. Congratulations to you and the team here in Osaka for delivering a wonderful and inspirational pavilion yourself. And I think it is a great way to demonstrate the power of the unification and bringing people together on so many levels. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to us, and looking forward to staying in touch.
Look forward. Thank you, Maher.
Thank you.